At the time, did you have any attorneys advising you or helping you as part of your support system?
Well, no. Family attorney, but not from a criminal perspective. You know, like I didn't think that I needed an attorney because I thought the prosecutor was the attorney for the victim. That turned out not to be the case at all.
So you use past tense. You say, I thought the prosecutor was the attorney for the victim. With this particular prosecutor, what is your understanding now of who that prosecutor is the attorney for?
He is definitely the attorney for the killer. Zero doubt in my mind. He is a public defender standing in a prosecutor's shoes.
Why?
Because I'm not the only mother that this has happened to. There was a vigil held, actually arranged by Kenyatta Johnson on Ellsworth, which is where Sean lived, on the same block as Kenyatta. And we all came together, and a woman walked up to me and said, "Can I hug you?" Her name was Diane Williams, and she said, "I'm from Moms Bonded by Grief." And we are a mother's group of moms that children have been killed in the city of Philadelphia. Gave me a hug, gave me a little bag. They have meetings on Tuesday night. I went to those meetings. And when I started to, I didn't walk into those meetings to talk about Larry Krasner, because you're in a room full of mothers that are grieving and crying, and there's a lot of feelings coming forward and emotion. But as I sat over a few weeks in that meeting, I started to hear these stories about Larry Krasner. So I'm at this third-degree murder charge. I'm upset about it, but I don't really understand it, and I still want to believe that Larry's charging, like he said, this is a classic third-degree murder. Was his exact words when we sat in front of him that day. I wanted to believe that he was following a process and we were going to find someone guilty of third-degree murder, or at least do our best to do that. The jury will decide. One mother was talking about someone walked up and shot her daughter point blank in the chest. All full video, 23 months, pled down. And that wasn't one story, it was story after story, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? I mean, again, I have no background in this. I have no, knowledge of where Larry was going. What I would say to you was I was a person that, frankly, agreed with looking hard at mass incarceration and what was happening as a result of the war on drugs and all of that. So I literally, and I've said this to Larry 5 times, I literally supported your platform. But your platform didn't have anything to do with reducing sentences of murderers or violent criminals. I thought this was about petty theft, small amounts of marijuana. But he has gone off on a tangent that is, in my opinion, it really is going to be anarchy. I mean, this is silly. Police officers say that when they're arrested, they say they want to call Uncle Larry. How sick is that?
Linda, now that you've gone through this process, are you aware of the difference between first-degree murder and third-degree murder and what it takes to meet the elements of first-degree murder versus third-degree murder?
Yeah, and what I would say to you, again, without a legal background, I would say to you that it is third-degree murder, and that probably was the right charge. And if we stopped right there and we allowed a jury to decide if this was third-degree murder or not, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. However, there are a lot of things that have happened over the last 14 months that make no sense to me. And I did stand up after the jury gave their verdict and said to the judge that I said I wanted Larry Krasner arrested today for obstruction of justice. And I still mean that. And I won't be happy until I see him in handcuffs. And I've probably said that 10 times now. And I'm saying it over and over again because I will not stop until I see him in handcuffs. And my reasons for that are many, many. Suppressing evidence. All of the, I will send to you the videos that Michael White posted in August after he killed Sean and in December, talking about blood in the street. He's a tough guy. Those videos are not the guy that you saw pulled into the courtroom looking like a choir boy. I'll send you those videos. All of his Facebook posts pre-killing Sean and post, none of this was admitted to evidence. And I was told because it wasn't admissible. So I think usually you want to understand someone's state of mind when they've killed someone, but apparently not in this case. I totally believe that the prosecutor suppressed evidence.
Why do you say that?
Because evidence was put forward, Facebook posts, videos. These are all presented by Michael, not presented by anyone else. Was not entered as evidence. He talked in his Facebook post about my life would be better if some of my family members were dead. The kid was crying out for help. When you read these, it's dark and it's ugly. It goes to his state of mind. Yeah, does your heart feel bad that no one reached out to this man to give him help? Or maybe they did and he didn't take the help. But all I can say is on that night, that person was looking to kill someone. I saw Larry walking down the street after I learned from the assistant district attorney that they had finally gotten Michael's phone, Michael White's phone. Michael White lied to the detectives, which came up in the trial, about his phone number because he didn't want them to be able to get the stuff off of his phone. Well, they finally did get his phone. 10 days before he killed Sean, he had written in his notes section on his phone, "Anybody fucks with me, I'm going to cut them." I saw Larry walking down the street, and I went and I shook his hand and I said, "Mr. Krasner, there's no evidence that suggests this might be first-degree murder because now we have intent. We might have premeditation here." And he said, "What evidence?" And I said, "It's the information that was on Michael's phone." "I don't know anything about that evidence." I said, "Well, I'm asking you to go back to your office to take a look at that evidence and make a determination if this charge is really back to first-degree murder." "Okay, I'll do that. Call my office." I called 5 straight days. I have the dates and the times. I, of course, never received a phone call back. I pressed and pressed about that being admitted to evidence. That small piece was admitted to evidence. That's all. And I think they just couldn't get away with not providing that evidence. But so it goes on and on and on about evidence that was presented. Even the woman who took the videotape, now I've learned, was instructed to only answer the questions. She was only being asked what was on the video, not what she saw prior to turning that video on. So there's piece after piece after piece. As Michael White testified that there was an Uber driver blocking the car. Sean was out of the car talking to that Uber driver. If you listen to the eyewitnesses, there was no yelling, there was no screaming, there was no fight going on. There was, "Can you move that car around so we can get around?" No fight. No one has touched anyone. Michael comes out of nowhere on his bicycle. He gets off his bicycle. The guy in the Uber car comes over and shakes Michael's hand and says, "Settle down, guy. There's nothing going on here." That's Michael's testimony. Why was he settling Michael down? He's telling him to settle down. That Uber driver got back in his car and left. The prosecutors say they never found that car. Well, I think Uber would know where that car was at 17th and Chancellor at 10:30 on July 12th. They didn't want to find that car. Why wouldn't you?
I'd like you to clarify, Linda, because when you talk about suppressing evidence, evidence gets into a trial by an attorney offering into evidence.
Yes.
And sometimes the judge says, no.
Right. Yes, I've learned that.
So I'd like you to clarify, are you saying that some of this evidence just wasn't offered in the trial, or are you telling me that the judge decided it wasn't relevant?
The evidence was never offered. It was never offered to even allow a judge to rule whether it was admissible or not.
Now, At any point during the trial, were the prosecutors in contact with you? Did you have a chance to ask what's going on here, what's happening?
So I've had quite a bit of interaction with Anthony Voci and Sherelle Dandy, who is the assistant district attorney. Let me start by saying, back up, before the trial, the Friday before the trial, I get a call from the assistant district attorney. Larry Krasner needs to speak to you at noon. Okay. We're still at third-degree murder at that point. So I get on a conference call with Larry, and Larry says, we've looked at all of the evidence, and we believe that we have a better shot at winning a manslaughter charge than we do a third-degree murder charge. So I'm going to file a motion to remove the third-degree murder charge. And I said to him, I said, Mr. Krasner, manslaughter's already a charge. So I'm asking you to leave the third-degree murder charge and allow a jury to decide. Now, he reacts like a crazy man, screaming at me.
On the telephone?
On the telephone. Literally screaming at me, like he's lost his mind. I won't tell you what I said to him because it was a bit inappropriate. But I've never in my professional life ever had someone behave so badly. And I think it was just because I was pushing back. And, you know, I didn't believe his story that he had a better chance of winning manslaughter. I thought that once he saw the evidence, the assistant district attorney and chief of homicide were working on that case for weeks. They were prepping him on Friday morning, which they told me the night before they'd be prepping him. I think when he saw the evidence, he thought third-degree murder he could be found guilty of third-degree murder here. I've got to get the charge off so that we have a worst-case scenario of manslaughter. And that's just from a sentencing perspective, because as we all know, his whole goal is to reduce sentences.
So how did that conversation end?
He said, it is my decision, and I'm filing a motion with the judge. You don't have to agree with me, but it's not your decision. 2 minutes later, his chief of homicide and the assistant district attorney called me and said, we're going down in the elevator. We'll call you back in 2 minutes. That call was an important call. Anthony Voci said, I'm telling you, I've talked to this judge in the last week over motions that you talk about admissibility. This judge is not dropping those charges. He is not going to remove that charge. I'm telling you right now, he's not. Sherelle and I are prepared to argue third-degree murder, and that's what we're going to do. And I said, well, that's not what I just heard on the phone call. And he said, well, Larry's filing that motion. We aren't. I said, okay, well, who's going to argue the motion when we get there on Monday morning? He said, that's to be determined. He's upset. He's shaking. His voice is shaking. And he says to me, this case means a lot to me. After meeting the people, the character witnesses, and going through all of this, Linda, it means a lot to me. And I'm telling you, if the judge asked me, I'm telling you on my kid's life, his words, as I reminded him, that I will tell the judge we should not drop the third-degree murder charge. Now, is this theater by Anthony Voci? Did he really mean it? It's very hard for me to tell. It was the heat of the moment. Both of these two have been working tirelessly on this case, and now their boss came in at the 11th hour and changed the strategy. I don't know what to say about that. Then when we got to court on Monday morning, when the motion was to be heard by the judge, if you read the newspaper would say to you that the judge ruled on that motion. What happened when we got in there was the judge says we have this motion to drop third-degree murder. But my understanding is that there's been a stipulation between the Commonwealth and the Public Defenders Association. And I'm thinking, what? They agreed through stipulation to drop the third degree. The judge has nothing to rule on at that point. They're allowed to do that. It's totally at Larry's discretion to make a deal with the Public Defenders Association. And that's what he did. The judge on The trial started on a Tuesday, or I'm sorry, on a Thursday. On Friday, the judge, after the jury left, there was an argument about something, and the judge looked over to the Commonwealth and he said, "You dropped the third-degree murder charge. You have made this much harder to prove because of the intent." I didn't know what that meant. But with manslaughter, I guess you have to show intent. With third-degree murder, you don't. That's at least the way that it was explained to me in a very simplistic way. The judge went off on the prosecution because they wanted him to put a charge in that basically was like a murder charge when he's charging the jury. And he said, "You took murder off, and now you're asking me to put a charge in? How does that work?" You know, so he was visibly upset and probably out of character for him, because I actually thought he was a very good judge and I thought that he was very fair. I think that Larry planned this the whole way along. My understanding now is there was a meeting 2 weeks before that Friday when Larry spoke to me with the public defenders group, and they had already come to a deal that that's what he was going to do. Now, why would you wait till the 11th hour? I don't know. News, whatever. I don't know.